You're listening to Tin Pod Radio. I'm Nicole from Night Owl Designs, and you can find me at shopnightowldesigns.com.
So I'm a cosplayer. I've been cosplaying for over 5 years now, maybe 6. I've been doing a lot of like Ruby stuff, but I also do a lot of video games like Borderlands and Skyrim and all types of things. I really like cosplay. I like making things, so I'm usually just building really crazy detailed props and costumes. That is me. Hello.
And how did you get into cosplay?
Actually, peer pressure. A few years ago, my friends were like, "Hey, there's this local convention that's going on. It's called KatsuCon, and we think you should go. We think you'd really enjoy it." And at the time, I didn't really know about cosplay. I wasn't as big of a nerd as I am now, especially like being like a weeby otaku. So it was very new to me. I didn't really know what to expect. And my first year, I went as a Pokemon trainer. I put together a closet cosplay of more of like my version of a Pokemon trainer, since I didn't really have the stuff to create like one of the actual characters. So I went and I found out that KatsuCon was really well known for costumes, and I just kind of fell in love with it. So this was like one of those instances where peer pressure was actually a good thing. Because now I like go to KatsuCon every year, plus a lot of other conventions.
You mentioned your first costume. Do you remember a lot about that first experience?
The first time that I actually like wore a costume like to a convention, yeah, that was when I did my Pokemon trainer. It was different because I got to express my, like, how nerdy I was. Like, generally, like, before cosplay, I was a pretty shy, nerd. Didn't have a whole lot of friends, was kind of scared to show, like, my nerdy sides. And then I go to this con where people are, like, dressing up as Pokemon. I'm just like, this is pretty cool. I really liked it because it allowed me to find people who like the same things as me, so like Pokemon, and we could connect and feel free to talk about our geeky stuff, geeky interests. So generally very, very positive for my first experience, and seeing people in like stuff that they've built or like they've worked hard on or like whatever was really inspiring to me and really pushed me to want to do like more challenging things, because I know like my next costume that I actually built, I did like another smaller one, which was Liz and Patty from Soul Eater, which I modified, and then I eventually, within that same year, I moved on to building my first costume entirely from scratch, which was the Skyrim Nightingale, which, let me tell you, was really ambitious. But it, it's so inspiring to, like, see what people create, and I was just pushed to want to do more.
We know, like, at conventions with cosplayers, a lot of them, that, like, people get their pictures took with cosplayers and stuff. Do you remember the first time somebody asked for a picture with you?
I know it definitely happened with, like, the Pokemon, but, like, what really, really sticks out to me, the most with, like, being, like, asked for photos, I think was when I built my first costume, like, entirely from scratch, which was my Nightingale. I went back to KatsuCon, and both me and my sister cosplayed, like, the same character. We both did, like, the Nightingale from Skyrim, and we both worked really hard on these costumes. Like, it was an ambitious build. And what was cool was we got so many photos. I remember, like, the last day of the con, like, it being Sunday, and I'm, like, exhausted from, like, all the photos, but I'm just so excited because people like it, like, as much as I liked it, and, like, I feel like I really accomplished something. And it was, like, a really great feeling. Like, I know, like, the last day, like, we were trying to leave. Like, we were getting lunch with my grandparents because my grandparents dropped us off at the con. And we were trying to go up the stairs to leave. And we were swamped with photos. Like, we couldn't get up the stairs. It was ridiculous. But generally a really good feeling of accomplishment. It was nice.
Do you still have some of your first costumes?
Oh yeah, I'm a hoarder. Well, not really a hoarder, but like it's hard to part with something that I put my time and soul like into. So I have a lot of my first costumes, like including that Nightingale costume, which I've remastered. But like I thought about like throwing it away, but I was like, this was the first thing I've built like entirely from scratch and by myself. So it's gonna be in my closet probably forever.
One of the things a lot of cosplayers like to bring up is like the things they like to do besides cosplay at conventions. What's one of the things you like to do besides cosplay?
Besides just cosplay at cons?
Yeah.
I really like to socialize. I like go to cons to talk to people. I love going to meet people and like being crazy and being like in character. But I guess that's cosplay because yeah. But that's a big reason why I do things like cookie parties or like the gatherings that I do. It's because I want to meet people. And I know generally cosplay keeps me pretty busy, so setting aside like a little bit to like get together and like eat cookies and talk like really helps me to like make new friends and help meet like other people and that kind of thing. So I generally like the community side of it for conventions.
You also you talked about earlier about how cosplaying and gave you a chance to explore a different side of yourself. Do you find the side of yourself being completely different from your cosplay side to that?
Well, cosplay like definitely gave me a chance to explore something different. Well, I guess it gave me more courage to really express who I am, because like again like before cosplay, like I was very shy, I was very nervous about expressing my geeky self because I thought people wouldn't like me. And going out and seeing that there was other geeky people like in the cosplay and the convention scene really like pushed me out of my shell a bit to like express that geeky side and not just hide it away. So I really think that that's the true side of me, and I'm glad that cosplay really brought it out.
With your what do you think is like your specialty? What is your strength as a cosplayer?
I think my biggest strength has to be detail work. I'm kind of really trash for details. I know that a while back I made a Tiny Tina cosplay from Borderlands 2, and with that costume in particular, I made it entirely based off the in-game reference material, so I copied every single cel-shaded line, all the little like the imperfections, the seams, everything was copied because I have like, it's how I kind of like celebrate the work that I really admire. Like, I like replicate it and I want to bring it to life. So I was just like, I'm gonna be really like nitpicky and just like copy every detail because it's what I love to do. I just love to see something that I care so much about and really enjoy come to life.
On the flip side of that, what would you think is your weakness, the thing you need to work on the most?
Thing I need to work on the most is not starting so many projects. Like, seriously, like, right now, like, I'm, like, finishing up my Beacon Academy Ruby, and I'm like, okay, I gotta start my secret costume for RTX. I also gotta do Trash Can Ruby. I gotta start, my next swimsuit costume. I like have all these ideas and I'm very spontaneous about them. Like one day, like I'm like, oh yeah, like I am gonna cosplay this, and the next day I'm like, oh no, I gotta do this now.
With like you were talking about a swimsuit type cosplay, would you consider, is your like xenomorph considered that in a way?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I made the xenomorph specifically for a water park con called CastleCon. So it's designed to be a swimsuit, and I can actually swim in it. And the coolest part is, like, my tail, it's basically a pool noodle, so it floats.
Is that one of your most complicated builds you did?
Definitely, like, one of my more complicated ones, simply because, well, one, the tail has over 100, dremeled, foam spikes. So it was a lot of work. And plus with the build, like, I had to figure out how to get it, like, it all to attach and stay on me without having, like, wardrobe malfunctions, because it is a swimsuit. Plus with the headpiece, like, man, was that something? So yeah, I would definitely say that was one of my more complicated builds. Same thing with like something like my remastered So Nightingale build, which is primarily foam and pleather and a lot of super glue, because I had to glue a lot of details onto that thing, which took forever.
Now I know like some cosplayers say they only use a costume probably for one convention, or some for multiple conventions. When you do something like that, that's a really complex one and it takes a while, do you plan on like, I'm going to use this a lot?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like if it's a big costume like that, then I usually take it to like a few cons. Sometimes like I wear it to like every con, like like my Ruby cosplays. Like I pretty much bring at least one version of Ruby. I have 10 versions, by the way, of Ruby. To a con at like per costume. So yeah, like I think they get good usage. I definitely say.
Do you usually do multiple costumes for conventions? Like, do you do a morning and an evening one per day?
Sometimes it depends on the con and what I'm wearing. Most of the costumes that I have, especially my like more complicated builds, because they're so complicated and like require special makeup and it takes so long for me to put them on and like get them off. Sometimes I just stick with the one costume a day. But, like, sometimes, like, if I have something simpler, like, for instance, if I'm wearing my Ty Lee costume, I can definitely change out into, like, something like my Fallout, which is also a complicated build, but not as complicated as something like my Xenomorph or my Nightingale, or Tiny Tina, which is, like, a lot of makeup. But, yeah, so, like, it really depends.
Do you have a so-called like emergency costume or a casual one? Let's say if it's hot somewhere and you just want to do more of a casual cosplay.
Yo, yeah. Like I have I have like pajama Ruby that I usually bring to con, and I have like my trash hats and fidget spinning glasses. So I'm just like, if I want to be extra derpy, I have the opportunity to, plus be super comfortable in like something like PJs or something, which is really nice because some of those costumes can be rough to wear, especially all day.
Have you ever had a convention like where your costume, you're just like, I'm done with it? Almost like a little kid when they're at Disney and they're done with their clothes halfway through.
Oh my god, yeah. Oh my god, that's so true. I know at KatsuCon this last year, I tend to like book myself too much with photo shoots, and I was debuting my Nightingale cosplay, and the first day, the first time, like I put it on, like I had like 3 back-to-back photo shoots, and this was like at like 8 like in the morning to like noon, so I was like jam-packed with like stuff in my cosplay schedule. And then like by the time like my last shoot came up, like I was like, okay, I need to take this off. I'm in pain, like I'm really tired, and oh my god, this costume. But yeah, I definitely have those moments.
Oh, what do you think is like the biggest attraction to people going into cosplaying? Do you think it's more of a community thing? Is it the artistic, the building side, or?
I think it's a lot of different things. Like one, like, well, what drew me in was I get to be like my favorite character. I get to not be me for a day. Like I can be like this crazy video game character who like runs around and steals sweet rolls. I don't know. And I thought that was pretty cool. But like on top of that, like there's also like the artistic side. It's like, what can I create? And I think it's really cool to see things that you like come to life. So I would definitely see that like as a draw as well, on top of the, oh yeah, I get to be my favorite character.
You talked about the photography. Do you is that a big thing for you when you go to conventions? Is photo shoots one of the main things for you?
It's definitely a huge thing for me, considering that well, cosplayers and photographers kind of work together like to be a team, because without one, there really can't be the other without the other. Because we both kind of help each other out with our content. So I would definitely say that it is pretty big. Like, I don't think there's a single con that I go to that I don't do photo shoots. Like, usually I do at least 1 or 2 at the minimum. Sometimes a lot more, depending on how big the con is and like what I'm wearing. But yeah, like I would definitely say that it's a thing that I do, but it's not like the main thing I do. Like, I try not. Well, nowadays, I try not to book myself too much. Like, I try to plan some free time so I can actually hang out with my friends or take off the costume if I want and have a break and eat food, because that's important.
Do you find it weird sometimes when you're at a convention and you're not in costume?
Yeah. It's a big reason why I'm always in cosplay. Like, I'm that weird person who's like, I'm gonna cosplay on Thursday. I'm gonna cosplay day 0 because I'm at this con and I'm excited to be this character. So, if I'm not in cosplay, like, I'm like, I feel a little odd. So, I'm just gonna hop in something casual, at the least. So, I feel like I am the character.
Like a friend of mine, like we went to a convention and it had like an early day, but it was like they hadn't even finished setting up yet, but you could go and look around and stuff like that. And like she jumped in a costume right away, and we were all just looking at her like.
Yo, like I feel that though. Like I'm like at last ColossalCon, well not this ColossalCon, like I totally cosplayed at Walmart. No regrets. Day 0, going to Walmart to get food. I'm in cosplay.
That reminds me, I live in Florida, and there's quite a few conventions down here, actually.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot. Like, my sister lives down there, so.
Yeah, and we were in Orlando at a McDonald's, and we were just sitting there, and all of a sudden, like, a whole troop of people dressed in Attack on Titan walked in, and it was like... and what... And it was like, and there was like one Link from like Legend of Zelda in that bunch.
Oh my gosh.
Is there any cosplay that you really wanted to do but you haven't tried yet?
Usually the cosplays that I really want to do, I I do them. I don't let difficulty or cost or anything like really get like be an obstacle for me. Like if I'm determined to do something, I'll do it. So I don't think that there's one thing that I really wanted to do that I just haven't.
Have you ever started one and either through difficulty or you just lose interest? Have you ever had one that you just didn't finish because of that?
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Like I have a bunch of projects that I've started and I just haven't had the chance to finish. And it's not necessarily because I'm just like done with them. Because like I like to work on things that I like feel like motivated to work on. So a really good example is Sarah from Final Fantasy 13 Part 2. I'm doing her more complicated outfit with like all the very detailed stitches and that kind of thing. And I chose to do that character because I really love her and I love her design. I feel like I feel like the project was like a passion project because like I wanted to do it for like the detail because I specifically loved it so much and I wanted to really sit there and really focus on my craftsmanship. And I took a break from it because a whole bunch of cons came up and I had like other plans to do. I just really didn't want to rush it. So I think it's more of a thing where I'm just like, I want to take my time and do a good job. So that's why I take those little breaks like that.
Just for like general information, like about how long does it take you to do a standard costume?
Lately I've been pumping them out pretty fast. I've had costumes take 2 weeks, which I don't recommend because it's very stressful. And lately most of my builds have been taking me about 1 to 2 months to do, like depending on how complex it is. It's about 1 to 2 months.
With like the time frame, how much planning goes into like, cause you got to plan for conventions and stuff like that. Do you plan out like months and months ahead of time, or?
I try not to plan too far ahead because I used to do that, and then I'd come up with like groups and stuff that I would like eventually drop because I get inspired by other things along the way, and I'm just like, I want to do that. So I try not to plan too far ahead, but generally, the furthest ahead that I do plan is probably 1 to 2 months, and I just go from there. So yeah.
With like the style of costumes, like you talked about, like a swimsuit style costume, and then you got your Skyrim costume, which is you're almost covered, if I ain't mistaken, ain't it? Like,
oh yeah. You don't see anything except my eyes.
Do you have your favorite kind, or do you just like doing all different kinds?
It's really hard to say which one's my favorite because I love them all because they all have their own like unique challenges. And that's what I really like about them is it challenges me in different ways to like use new materials or try different styles or whatnot. So I can't really have a favorite because I just love them all so differently.
One of the things like a lot of people like hearing about is what the cosplayers like workshop or work area is. Some people have like a garage, some people just have their house and it's all over the place. What's your work area like?
Oh my gosh, my work area is chaos. So I have like a little sewing room that I'm actually in right now because I'm actually finishing up my Beacon Academy Ruby jacket. And right now it is essentially my gaming computer, my sewing machine, the iron's on the floor, there's fabric and needles everywhere. It is like, it's a war zone because I have a con in like, I think 3 days. Yeah, it's like 3 days. So I'm prepping for that. And usually right before a con, it's a mess. This is where I like do like my sewing stuff. Like I do also work in the garage for like prop stuff, and that's that's pretty clean right now because I'm not working on props right now for this con. But for the next one I will. Woo. And then I also work at a friend's house, so there's a lot of different places that I go to work on my stuff.
that makes me think, like, do you do a lot of cosplays with people? Not necessarily, like, in groups for, like, photos or anything like that, but work on them together?
Oh yeah, definitely. Lately I've been doing a lot of my projects with Jake Scribbles. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, all that fun stuff. He's the one who actually designed my Xenomorph swimsuit. He could actually draw stuff, unlike me, so I'm just like, can you draw my swimsuit? And he's perfectly fine with that, / helping me with, like, foam and crazy stuff that I am like, I want to do, and we have 2 weeks to do it. So yeah, usually I work with people. I'm, like, totally for that.
Looking at some of your cosplays from, like, even, like, photos of your Tiny Tina to, like, the Xenomorph video you had with the bubbles, which was a very cool video. Like, there's a lot of energy in the stuff you do. Are you the energetic one of the group when you go?
Yeah, definitely. Like, well, when people go to, like, try to find me at cons, or they message me, they're like, how do I find you, or whatever, and I'm, like, usually like, just listen for the screaming, because usually 90% of the time I'm, like, screaming at the con, like whenever I go, like, screaming about how excited I am and getting really in character. Like, I'm pretty hyper. Like, there's a reason I cosplay, like, characters like Tiny Tina and Ruby Rose from Ruby. It's because I'm essentially that same hype level. Like, energy all the time.
So, like, is there anything that makes you, like, when you go to convention where you, I wouldn't say drop character, but in a way character, because, like, cosplayers are in character and they get in character for photos with people and photo shoots. Is there any one thing that makes you kind of geek out, like seeing another good cosplayer or celebrity even at a convention?
Oh, like when people, like, get in character?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff? Oh, yeah, I definitely, like, love it when people go the extra mile and they act out how that character would act. They say, like, lines that the character was known for, or, like, whatnot. Like, I definitely geek out, like, at that stuff. Like, I know, like, there's some cosplayers that I follow specifically because they're so good at it. Like, there's this one group that I follow who do Tiny Tina and Krieg from Borderlands, and I'm super Borderlands trash, so I, like, love, like, whenever they post, like, their in-character so videos of them, like, doing all the crazy, like, Tiny Tina and, like, Krieg talk, and I'm just like, I love this. This is great. Stay pure. By the way, if you guys want to follow them, their page name is 1,000 Faces Cosplay. So good. Like, I love them.
Cool. I'll have to check it out myself.
I actually had to finally meet them at ColossalCon, which was pretty cool, after I've been following them for years, so they're super sweet.
When it comes to your costumes and stuff, like, when you're, making them, do you use a form when you're making them, or do you just fit them toward your size as you're going?
It really depends on the build. I do have a dress form for, like, things to sew and, like, whatnot, but, like, for things like the Xenomorph and how it has to be so form-fitted. For things like that, I do duct tape builds. So essentially, I have a friend saran wrap me and then duct tape me and then get really up close and personal and draw out, like, the parts that I need for the costume and then carefully cut them out. So it really depends on, like, what the build is, but I generally do both.
We know, like, most cosplayers are going to conventions when they cosplay. Like, but I mean, there's cosplay at almost everything now, from, like, shows to different kinds of conventions. Is there anything about conventions you don't like that much? Because, like, personally myself, the food's always a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yo. Okay. Yes. now that you bring up food, like there was this one con that I went to and we were starving. Like we haven't eaten like all day. We were about to go and drive home since we were just staying for the day essentially. And we were just like, before we make the long road trip back, let's get some food. So we stopped by like one of the food places that was inside the convention center. And we were like, okay, those pizzas look pretty cute. Of course, they were like way too pricey because it's convention food. Of course, they're gonna like make it super expensive. Get the pizza, and I remember like sitting down, taking a bite of the pizza, and being like, "This is the worst pizza ever." It was like rubbery. You could totally tell like the pizza was microwaved for probably a few seconds before they gave up because there was such a long line. But yeah, it was the worst pizza I've ever had in my life.
With your cosplay and stuff, do you have a background in costuming, or did you just learn as you went?
Well, when I started to cosplay, I was in college, and at the time, like, I was studying, like, literature and, like, that kind of thing, and then it was later on that cosplay really inspired me to get more into the theater side. So the university that I went to had like a theater, so like a minor that I could do, and specifically in cosplay. So I then decided that that's what I was gonna do. So I did my theater minor specifically in costuming. I took like every costuming class. I got a job at the costume shop, so I ended up making costumes for the shows that we put on, which was pretty cool. And then I eventually ended up founding and being president of the cosplay guild for there. So yeah, I definitely think that I have a background, but I think it developed while like I was kind of finding my place within the cosplay world. So yeah.
What do you think you've learned in cosplay that's going to affect your like future? Like, is there a lesson you learned or a skill you learned?
I feel like cosplay. Well, I feel like the biggest thing with cosplay is like you'll never stop like learning new things. There will always be something out there that's new, and you can't really be afraid of it. Like, it's okay to be new at something. People have to start somewhere, and I don't let fear of like working with something new or trying out a new tool or like whatever, or trying out a new technique or new type of costume. I welcome it. I see it as a good challenge, and I feel like I'll constantly be learning, and I think that's a really cool thing about cosplay is it like I will probably like never be bored by it because I'm gonna constantly be challenging myself and taking away like new material that I didn't know about before. So definitely that.
Earlier you mentioned like having a Twitch. What do you primarily use your Twitch for?
I play a lot of video games. Lately I've been playing some Fortnite, which has been pretty great. I love me some Fortnite. I played a lot of Fallout. Also can't wait for Fallout 76. I know that that's what I'll probably be playing when that comes out because I'm a huge Fallout / Bethesda junkie. Hence why I have so much Bethesda cosplays, because I love them. But yeah, primarily gaming. I love video games. I was a gamer before I was a cosplayer, so...
Yeah. I've gotten sucked into the Fortnite bubble.
It's so good. Like, I kind of want to do a cosplay from it. Like, I was like, I want to be the dinosaur.
I was like telling a friend, I was like, I'm gonna be the person that dies like 2 minutes into because it happens to me a lot.
I feel that though.
It's like parachute die.
Yeah, pretty much.
With the gaming side of things, do you like more cosplay gaming characters, or is it from like movies or?
Most of my costumes are from games because I feel like I started off playing like more games and being more like of a game. Well, I'm like so far behind with like movies and stuff, so I like tend to like I sometimes do movies. I think being Xenomorph is probably like one of the first movie characters that I've done. I do have another one that I'm doing pretty soon. That's not the Xenomorph, but something else that's cool in sci-fi. But I would say, yeah, it's definitely more gaming, like Borderlands and Skyrim and Fallout. A lot of games.
Do you automatically, when you're watching something or playing a game, think, oh, I want to do that. I really want to do it?
Yes. Sometimes, like, I'm, like, playing a game and I see a design that I really like, or like, a character whose personality, like, I really, like, connect with, and I'm like, I want to cosplay this. And I, like, then, like, the entire way through, like, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this until I eventually do it. I become pretty obsessed with it, I would say.
Well, that can be a good thing, too.
Yeah.
When you go to conventions or events, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but you see other people sometimes and you're like, crap, I wish I did it that way or something, or I admire the way they did it.
Definitely, yeah. I think, like most people, tend to compare themselves with, like, other people, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can take a lot away from, like, learning how somebody else does something like wig styling, for instance. I know that I am not that great at wig styling, so when I go to a con and I see someone else's wig that I really like, I'm like, ooh, that looks really good. And then I'll go up to them and I'd be like, oh, so how did you do this? And, like, do you have, like, any suggestions or, like, whatnot? I think it's a big reason why, like, I would compete in costume contests, because there's a lot of people, a lot of talented people there, who you can learn a lot from, like, just, like, backstage talking with them. So definitely, like, I tend to, like, scope out people who I admire, and I go and I ask questions. And I think that's very important. Like, we shouldn't feel like we can't talk to each other and get help. Like, it's okay to have, like, a senpai and be like, hey, how did you do this? You're really cool.
You were talking about doing wig styling, and that. Do you always think sometimes about, you were talking about always learning, do you think sometimes, like, oh, I want to do this, and it doesn't bother me a bit that I have to learn this totally new thing?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Going back to wig styling, I had to stub my first wig for Cosplay. I don't do a lot of wig styling, so this was interesting. I was doing Ty Lee from the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and we were doing the island version. And Ty Lee has her hair up in a high ponytail, and I got, like, the genie wig. And you have to stub that one to get the ponytail look that she has. And I definitely had to, like, do something new, because I don't work a whole lot with wigs, or I do minimum styling, and this was a lot of styling for me. And when I was doing it, a specific cosplayer, who I really admire, kind of drew as inspiration. She's actually, like, a really good friend of mine, Noju Cosplay. She's so talented at, like, wig making, and, like, the entire time, like, I was building it, like, I was, like, thinking about her advice and what she has told me about wig styling and, like, whatnot, and I was like, I'm gonna make this, and I'm gonna make it, and hopefully impress her. And I really wanted to push myself and make it look nice so we can be cute together, because since we were actually all doing this as a group, so I'm actually good friends with her, like, she's, like, my best friend, so
Oh, that's cool.
We did it together as a group.
Is group cosplays, like, connected, like, the same universe, or is that something you do a lot, or do you tend to be, like, you might be in a group with people, but you're doing different characters?
I usually do groups. I tend to be the one who starts them, and then I invite people. When I do groups, I like to have it so people can cosplay whoever they want. Like, they don't have to all be different characters. They can all be the same characters if they want. I don't care. Like, I just want them to have fun. And when I invite people to do those groups, I want them to feel like they can cosplay the character that they want to do. So I think it's totally cool to be like whatever you want. Duplicates are welcome, perfectly fine. So yeah.
A lot of cosplayers have like to fund it because we all know cosplaying isn't a cheap thing to do.
Oh, no, not.
They did stuff like Patreons or they sell like prints and stuff. Is that something you do?
Patreon soon. I want to make cosplay more of a full-time thing for me to do. Like, I eventually want to get to the point where it could be like a full-time job. That would be really cool because it's what I love to do, and I could do it every day, and I'd be happy the rest of my life. So I definitely do plan on doing a Patreon, probably next month. Like sooner than you think. But like on the topic of like money and like funding for cosplays and that kind of thing, something that's been pretty popular right now is the use of coffee. So I have a coffee and I put out I set certain goals and that kind of thing for different builds. Like for instance, my Xenomorph was completely funded by coffee. I just first I do the research to see how much it would cost me to build the costume, and then I set the goal and put it out to my following. And if people want, they could send me money, and I'd do like a shout out, or like they would see like sneak peeks behind the builds or whatever. But I think it's a really good way for people to be able to support, since I've had people come up to me being like, I love your work. I would love to support you, but I don't know how. And I'm like, there's a lot of ways you can. Coffee definitely being one of them, with like helping me financially, be able to build something like as complicated as like the Xenomorph or like something like a Nightingale or whatever.
Well, cosplaying is very much an art form. Like,
yeah.
And anybody that thinks it isn't, they're just nuts. Like, because it is, it's an art form. And like most people, well, some people don't think you shouldn't pay for art, but whatever, you should pay for art. But do you think there's any blowback sometimes with cosplayers? Because some people look at it as being like not a job thing, so they're like, oh, why are you asking for money? And it's like, well, you're producing art that people like. Do you think there's any blowback on cosplayers sometimes?
I've heard that there's been some blowback, like with people who, like, for instance, start Patreons. People are like, oh, you're putting your stuff behind a paywall. What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. But, like, I've noticed a lot of the community has grown more accepting of it because they understand that it costs time, it costs money, it costs a lot to put something like a costume or a big prop together. And I see it like as like another form of media. Like we're producing content. We are content creators. And like similar to like people who do live streams or who do like have their own YouTube channels, we're providing content for people. And it takes time and money and effort for us. And I think it can definitely like evolve into like a job type thing. So I think people have grown pretty accepting of that, which is nice. Yeah. Like cosplay is like, instead of it just being seen like as something that could be a hobby, it's being seen as something that can evolve into someone's job, which is actually pretty cool.
Yeah. On the grounds of like you were talking about like people doing different things to raise money, we all know there's different kinds of cosplay. There's like the normal cosplays. I don't want to say normal because that almost makes other stuff sound negative. But there's what the mainstream people make consider cosplay, and then there's other stuff like boudoir cosplay, and more risque photos and stuff like that. Do you think like there's room for all that? Because I actually do think there's room for all that, even if you don't like it. But what's your opinion on those different styles?
Oh yeah. Well, I am definitely for it. If like you want to cosplay something a certain way, like if you want to do like the original version of something, go for it. But like if you want to do something that's, let's say, more sexy, go for it. There shouldn't be something that stops you, and nothing that really defines what is or is not cosplay. Cosplay is what you make it. Have fun with it.
Have you, with any of your bathing suits cosplay, had any issues, people having issues with any of those?
Surprisingly, I have gotten such a positive response, especially from the cosplay community. It's been overwhelming how positive it's been, that it really blocks out a lot of the negative. Granted, yes, because it is a swimsuit, I have received a little bit of harassment and a little bit of hate because people are just sexy costume, not costume thing. It's just a girl who just put on a swimsuit. But really, it's no, I actually built that costume entirely from scratch. There was a lot of effort put into it. And who is to say what is cosplay and what is not cosplay? If someone doesn't like something, they should just scroll past it. Just let me have my fun.
Yeah. There's a recent magazine that just started up called Cosplay Journal.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and yeah, you can probably look it up online. I
am definitely looking this up online.
But with all that the stuff different kinds of cosplay and cosplay for different people and in different places, do you think it's growing or is it plateauing or?
I think it's definitely growing. With the amount of cons that I'm seeing pop out of nowhere, it's definitely still growing, and I think that is just so awesome because going back to cosplaying becoming a legitimate job, this gives people the opportunity to actually make that a reality because it gets the attention of from businesses, from gaming companies to come in and hire cosplayers or whatnot. So yeah, I definitely see it as growing.
Where do you see it going? Do you see it changing in different ways?
Well, I feel it will constantly change. It will constantly evolve. People will constantly just be discovering new materials. The scene will be changing, and that kind of thing. I can't really predict how, but I know I kind of expect it. I don't expect it to always be the same. It will change.
Oh, and I was right earlier. It is called Cosplay Journal.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I need this because lately I just have cosplay culture, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love going to the bookstore and being oh yeah, look, here it is. I love it.
It's live journal. I mean, not live journal. Instagram. It shows you how old I am that I said live journal. Is Instagram the main place where most people can find you?
Instagram is probably one of my more active social medias that I use, although it's not the only one I have. I also have a Facebook page, and a Twitter, so I actively use that. I also have a Tumblr, but I don't really talk about my Tumblr that much because I haven't updated it in probably a month. I think I mostly use it for collections of photos and tutorials when I remember to post them.
I auto post to my Tumblr and I only remember
That's smart.
Yeah, I only remember it's there when all of a sudden it says somebody liked something on your Tumblr and I'm like, oh, I still have one of those.
It's oh yeah, that exists. That's right. Yep, there it is.
So, again, thank you for joining me and agreeing to talk to me late at night.
Thank you for having me.
Is there any upcoming projects or anything you'd like to talk about before we go?
Ooh, yeah, actually, so this is one that I haven't discussed with anybody, so this is kind of reveal. My next big swimsuit thing that I'm doing that's more sci-fi side, I plan on making a gremlin from Gremlins, and I am really obsessed with the idea of transformation, so I'm going to have it transform from Gizmo to the Gremlin, so the scary looking thing. So going to have the combination of cute and scary and transforming, and it's going to be great and fun and challenging, but it's going to be a good time. I'm really excited.
Be interesting to see how that turns out.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And that's something you're currently working on right now?
I'm in the planning stages right now. I have designs. Right now I am looking at materials and doing my character study, but I am going to be starting that in the next 2 weeks or so, like actually building it.
Cool. And like I said, thank you again for agreeing to talk to me. And it's,
Yeah, thank you.
Under the Training Books is a sleep-deprived, often drunk writer's brain dump, expelling the wasteland of words and thoughts from his brain so he can reboot for the rest of the week. Under the Training Book is a journal-style show resembling a Diaryland blog. It's a mix of rants on politics, musings about faith, pop culture references, and every stream of consciousness thought that might cross the mind, all on Tin Pod Radio.